Welcome class and learners. I hope you are all doing well and ready to learn. In my last video, I went over how to create some basic MLA citations. Today we will start talking about how to utilize quotes in a paper and use those citations we made to give credit for those quotes. We do this by using in-text citations. An in-text citation is a reference made within the body of text of an academic essay. There are two ways to write in-text citations. The first is writing the citation directly into the text. This is when, within the sentences you are formulating in your paper, you list the source, author, and page number of your quote or information directly in your paper. But remember, you only want to list the source title, which would be the book title or article title, and the author's full name the first time you use them. Afterwards, you will just address the source by the author's last name. The other way of writing in-text citations is the parentheses way. This is honestly the best way because it helps you to be concise and straightforward and to the point with your paper. In the parentheses, you will list the author's last name and the page number. It's still a good idea, though, to list the source title and author's full name the first time you use them within your paper. Remember, your period always goes after the in-text citation. Today we are going to use this quote from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone to create different kinds of in-text citations using different kinds of quotes. The quote we're going off today is, "There are all kinds of courage," said Dumbledore, smiling. "It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. I therefore award 10 points to Mr. Neville Longbottom." And this can be found, at least in my copy of the book, on page 306. First, let's make a citation for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. This should give you flashbacks to our last video. We have the author's last name followed by first name, or in this case, the initials, the title of the book in italics, followed by the city of publication, the publisher's name, and the date of publication. First, we're going to go over how to paraphrase a quote or source within your paper. On all these slides, I have the citation still listed on the top of the slide, so that way we can keep referencing back to it. Tips for paraphrasing include putting the content into your own words. That's literally what paraphrasing means. There is no need for quotation marks because you are not directly quoting your source. Instead, you are reading the information and you are paraphrasing, or similar to summarizing, what they said within their work. I have two examples here, one for each kind of in-text citation. The first one is the citation within your writing. The first example reads, "Rowling gives credit to Neville when Dumbledore praises his bravery in standing up to his friends," on page 306. As you can see, I'm giving credit everywhere I can. Rowling is the name of the author. Gives credit to Neville when Dumbledore praises his bravery in standing up to his friends is the paraphrasing. That is me summarizing what our quote is, and then I also say what page this happened on. A more concise way of doing an in-text citation for this paraphrase might be saying instead, "Neville is given credit for his bravery in standing up to his friends by Dumbledore," and then having a parentheses, Rowling, 306, end parentheses, and a period. As you can see, we have our last name of the author and the page number, and that is it. It makes it very concise and easy to follow along without having to get bogged down in a whole bunch of wordy mess in your paper. Now we're going to talk about direct quotes within a paper. When using direct quotes in your paper, this means you're only using a short piece from the text word for word, and you will need to use quotation marks. If you forget your quotation marks, then you are plagiarizing. Remember that big P word. Here are two examples. On page 306, Rowling writes Dumbledore as saying, "There are all kinds of courage." The second example says, Dumbledore says, "There are all kinds of courage." Rowling 306. As you can see, in both examples, we have our author's name listed, and in both examples, we have the page number, 306, And we have the quote from Dumbledore. There are all kinds of courage. Now we're going to go over block quotes. These can be a bit more difficult, but they can be really handy when writing your paper. Tips for writing block quotes. When you're writing a block quote, you're only going to use longer word-for-word pieces from the source. This means they're probably going to be about 3 or more lines on your paper. Sometimes you don't plan to use a block quote until you're writing the quote you want to use in your paper and you realize this is getting long. When you're writing your paper and you're using quotes, if you notice that the quote you're writing, it goes further than 3 lines, you need to make it into a block quote. When you're formatting a block quote, you're going to put it onto its own lines. So you're going to open up to the block quote using a colon. So you're going to say, blah, blah, blah says, colon, and then you're going to go down a line and you're going to have your quote. You're going to indent the entire quote off so that way when people are looking through your paper fast, they can tell where your block quotes are. Quotation marks are only necessary for a block quote if you need to differentiate what is dialogue and what is not within your block quote. Here is one example using a block quote. As we approach the block quote, we want to open up and give why we are giving this block quote or what the block quote is supposed to mean. To do that, I said, Rowling gives credit to often forgotten character Neville Longbottom on page 306. Since I have also included the author and page number in this introduction to the block quote, I don't have to do a in-text citation with parentheses. And then we have, starting on a new line, the quote from Dumbledore indented so that way we can tell at a glance that this is a block quote and not something we wrote ourselves. After your block quote, you're not always just going to start a brand new paragraph. You don't always start a brand new paragraph when you use a direct quote, right? So when you do finish a block quote, you will push enter, go to the next line, but don't indent like you're starting a new paragraph. Start flush to the left and continue writing your paragraph as if that was just any other direct quote. Please note that in this example, we do have some quotation marks. Why? Because within the block quote, there is some dialogue, but there is also some areas that is not dialogue, like the said Dumbledore smiling part. The next example is an example without quotation marks and using the parentheses method. I open up to the block quote by saying, Dumbledore shows how well he pays attention to all of his students when he says, and then I have that colon, and then I have the block quote, it takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. I therefore award 10 points to Mr. Neville Longbottom. And then I have the in-text citation, which is a parentheses, the author's last name, the page number, an end parentheses, and a period. Remember, that period goes after the in-text citation. And then on the next line, I have the continuation of the paragraph talking about the quote and why I was using that. In this example, I followed a block quote with, this shows that Dumbledore's character is ... Doing this helps your reader to understand why you're using this block quote in your paper and gives you a chance to elaborate on the meaning behind the quote. And that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this video on how to create some basic and simple in-text citations within your next paper. I hope you have a great day and keep learning, and see you soon.